Hello. 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 Thank you very
The procession is now ongoing, please. They'll soon join us in the procession. Mr. Jude, that's your seat here.
You're welcome to the 74th inaugural lecture of Nnamdi Azikiwe University, Awka, to be delivered by the erudite professor of neurosurgery, Professor J.K.C. EMEJULU. We welcome Professor EMEJULU and the wife. We welcome the Vice Chancellor of the university, Professor Charles Okechukwu Simone, ably represented by the Director of Academic Planning, Professor Ike Odimegwu. We welcome the Chairman of the Inaugural Lecture Committee, the indefatigable Professor Richard Owakwe, my immediate boss here. We welcome my teachers in no particular order. You must allow me today to welcome our papa, our grandfather, our father, our teacher, past president of West African College of Surgeons, the man that established surgery in Nnamdi Azikiwe University, Professor O.O. Mbono, past provost, Professor J.B. Adimma. You're welcome. The provost of the college, Professor, a fine professor, my personal friend and teacher, Professor G.O. Udigwe. You're welcome. For want of time, we are going to run fast. While still standing, we take the university anthem, we take the opening prayers before we take our seats. The anthem and then prayer. Prof. Yes, sir. With reverence, we honor you. Are you listening? Are you listening? Where we let the unity, we have. We call on our father of today, Professor O.O. Mbono, to lead us in the opening prayer. Prof, sir.
Shall we put our hands together in gratitude to God for today's event? Shall we put our hands together in gratitude to God for today's event? Thank you, Almighty Father, for the event of today. One of us is completing one of his academic functions, inaugural lecture, 74th in the series of this university. We plead that you be the unseen chairman and may the function go smoothly without any hindrances. We thank you for bringing all of us from several parts of the country, from the state, for this function. May UNIZIC continue to grow from strength to strength. As we finish this, we hope that other members of our faculty and the university community will continue to enrich the academics of this university by giving further lectures. May God bless all of us. In Jesus' name.
Amen. We thank the professor of professors and teacher of teachers, Professor O.O. Mbono. Maka afa nke a ọgbara, anyị ma na olego already. The person that will give the citation should be getting ready after the Vice Chancellor's opening remarks. Then the person will quickly come and give us the brief on the inaugural lecturer. We recognize a past inaugural lecturer from Nnewi, Professor SNN Nwosu, my teacher, a past dean of the Faculty of Medicine, the doyen of ophthalmology. They are here to see. We recognize the pro-chancellor of this university. We recognize the vice chancellor, the past vice chancellors, deputy vice chancellors, academic and administration, both past and present. We recognize members of the University Governing Council, College of Health Sciences, the Provost, College of Postgraduate Studies, deans of faculties and directors, heads of departments and coordinators, distinguished professors, including emeritus professors. We recognize the visiting academics and colleagues to this event. We recognize the administrative staff of the university. We recognize in a special way in absentia Dr. ABC Ojako, who sent in a special goodwill message to this event. He's actually not in the country. He would have been here in person. My lords, spiritual and temporal, esteemed family members and friends of our inaugural lecturer, great university graduates and students, the virtual audience, we recognize you. Gentlemen of the press, the ICT and MIC2 that make this possible, we thank you. Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, you are welcome to the 74th inaugural lecture of Nnamdi Azikiwe University, Awka, to be delivered by the Professor of Neurosurgery at the College of Health Sciences, Professor J.K.C. EMEJULU. Before we go on the event, we are going to invite the Vice Chancellor of the university to give his opening remarks. That will immediately be followed by the citation of the inaugural lecturer. Vice Chancellor, sir.
Thank you very much, Prof. And the master of this particular ceremony, the inaugural lecturer, Professor EMEJULU, Nnamdi, the provost of the College of Health Sciences, the emeritus professors here, the professors of the College of Health Sciences and the Faculty of Medicine in particular, the deans. You can see the Dean of Basic Clinical Sciences and the other deans present here. The chair and members of the organizing committee of our inaugural lecture series. The other professors of the university here present. The senior administrative and technical officers of the university here present. The heads of departments, directors of centers and institutes, the entire faculty of Nnamdi Azikiwe University, staff and students of Nnamdi Azikiwe University, family and friends of the inaugural lecturer, friends, guests of the university, I welcome all of you. In the name of our Vice Chancellor, Professor Charles Esimone, who had an emergency call and had to travel out yesterday late evening after Senate, I welcome all of us to the 74th inaugural lecture of Nnamdi Azikiwe University, to be delivered by our own neurosurgeon, Professor JKC EMEJULU. Today, we have gathered to listen to, in philosophy, we say a good brain. Who is a master of the brain? Who has gathered us to talk to us about the brain? Neurosurgery. This is one part of the body which in philosophy has constituted a problem up till today. Is it physical? Is it material? Or is it immaterial? Or is it that middle point between the material and the immaterial? And the professor of neurosurgery has gathered us to talk to us about the challenge. I would have added S so that it will be challenges, so that he has more things to deal with, of pioneering neurosurgery. The inaugural lecture of Nnamdi Azikiwe University has grown in leaps and bounds. A few years ago, people wondered whether Nnamdi Azikiwe had inaugural lecture series at all. Today, it is not only that the inaugural lectures come in their time with regularity and increasing excitement and rigor, it is also that leveraging on the technologies of today, we now talk, our inaugural lecturers today talk not just to the local audience, but also to the global audience. And so it is my pleasure to welcome you, invite the inaugural lecturer, and declare the 74th inaugural lecture of Nnamdi Azikiwe University open. Thank you, and God bless you.
Thank you, our Vice Chancellor, Professor Okechukwu Simone. May I now call on the lecture, Dr. O.C. Ekwo, the citation. First of all, may I ask the inaugural lecturer to stand out while Dr. O.C. Ekwo, one of his products here, will proceed to give us the abridged, shortened, summarized, modified, brief citation of the inaugural lecturer. Inaugural lecturer, sir. Stop. I haven't told you that he's from my department. He's coming after me. You are welcome. Are you ready? Can you start talking? Are you ready?
Good afternoon, everyone. Standing on the existing listed protocols, I'm presenting the citation of Professor JKC EMEJULU, who will present his inaugural lecture. Topic is the challenge of pioneering neurosurgery. At exactly 9:31 p.m., just as an introduction on Friday, 6th of January 2023, I received a phone call from the inaugural lecturer, Professor JKC EMEJULU. Following our exchange of pleasantries, he immediately politely requested that I should present his citation for the inaugural lecture. Immediately, I was utterly mystified, numb, perplexed, petrified, and transfixed. I asked myself, why me? With apologies, all of a sudden, as a pastor, few Bible verses started running through my head. Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, even in the Acts of Apostles, they stated when John the Baptist, even though he came before Jesus Christ, said he was not worthy to carry or untie his sandals. The irony of this is my master came before me, unlike John the Baptist. Who did that? And before I go into the abridged version of the citation, the first thing that came to my mind is, I can't do this. Let me run away like Jonah. I went back to the good books and I saw what Jonah did, what Jonah went through when he ran away. I had to succumb. Then, just like in the book of Isaiah 6:8, sir, here I am, send me. I'll present it. Now, Professor EMEJULU was born at Joint Hospital in Olu Division to his late parents, Mr. Benedict and Mrs. Roslyn EMEJULU, as the fifth of 9 offsprings, and was brought up in Ihiala after his family had to relocate on account of travails of the Civil War. He had his primary education at St. Joseph Catholic School, Awka, Ihiala, and graduated from his secondary school at Agulu Grammar School, where he won the overall best graduating student in 1980, and with more than 10 prizes, the most treasured of which he regards as the academically best student of Agulu Grammar School. In 1982, he was admitted into the University of Nigeria in Nsukka to study medicine and surgery, and graduated in 1988 on the merit list. He was retained for best common member for the 1989-1990 main batch management board. He served for 1 year, then delved into private practices in Niger and Lagos State before he returned for residency training program at Nnamdi Azikiwe University Teaching Hospital. He became a senior registrar in 2000, the year 2000, barely 2 years after joining the program, and then subsequently went for his residency training at UCH, University College Hospital, Ibadan, following which he obtained the fellowship of the West African College of Surgeons in 2005 to become a specialist neurosurgeon. He later got a scholarship for a pediatric surgery program in the US, in Boston. In February 2008, he was employed as lecturer 1 in surgery and subsequently consultant neurosurgeon in May 2006. And with both appointments, he became the pioneer lecturer in neurosurgery and the first neurosurgeon in Nnamdi Azikiwe University Teaching Hospital. During the curriculum for designing the curriculum for training and research for both undergraduate and postgraduate programs. He also had several subsequent degrees. He's a scholar of the American Association of Neurological Surgeons. He was awarded also International Travel Fellowship Scholarship, which he studied a post-fellowship course in neurosciences at a center in Oshna Health Systems in New Orleans. He has held several positions. He was the head of Accident and Emergency, Department of Anesthesiology and Department of Surgery of Nnamdi Azikiwe University, the Nodal Officer of Service Compact with All Nigerians, Servicom, and also actually won the Servicom Merit Award for Excellence. He has also held other posts and was Faculty Examination Officers of Medicine, Deputy Orator of UNIZIC, member of the Ceremonial Convocation Matriculation, Bookshop, Lecture, Monitoring and Admissions Committees of the university. He was promoted to Senior Lecturer in 2009, Reader in 2012, and a Professor in 2015. He has also held several positions both in the university and the hospital, the teaching hospital, and he has remained a member, an examiner of the membership and fellowship postgraduate programs of West Africa College of Surgeons from 2012 till date. He's currently the Secretary General of Association of Neurological Science Surgeons of West Africa and presently member of Council of West African College of Neurosurgeons. He has been the representative of neurosurgery in West African College of Surgeons and Chief Coordinator of Postgraduate Training Courses, Faculty of Surgery, West African College of Surgeons. He's also an examiner in undergraduate and postgraduate medical schools, and he has supervised so many projects. Currently, Professor EMEJULU has trained and produced 4 neurosurgeons for Nnamdi Azikiwe University Teaching Hospital. Namely, my humble self, Dr. Ekwogo Fodile Chukwuneche, Dr. Nkwerem Sunday Patrick, Dr. Mbanugo Tochukwu Henry, Dr. Wibo Onyemechi Ereke. And like I know my boss, he hasn't stopped there. He will continue to roar like a lion. He has 4 other potential neurosurgeons in training, and they include Dr. Okpalike Chukwu Valentine, Dr. Nwosu Raphael Chima, Dr. Okeke Chike Chekwube, and Dr. Okafo Chukwudemma. Currently, he heads the Neurotrauma Registry in Southeast Nigeria, and even in the Nigerian Academy of Neurological Surgeons, sorry, NANS. He's also the Director of Neurotrauma and Neurosciences of Nnamdi Azikiwe University, and he's currently the National President of the Nigerian Academy of Neurological Surgeons. He has accredited so many centers at the postgraduate level. He was the founding editor of Journal of Clinical and Applied Science, Neurosciences, founding editor of Archives of Neurosurgery in Africa, and has reviewed several articles in several journals worldwide. He's a Rotarian and a 3-star Paul Harris Fellow. I'm also currently a Rotarian, and he was the one who showed me the light into Rotary. He's a 3-star Paul Harris Fellow. I'm a 1-star Paul Harris Fellow, but I'll be like him when I grow up. So he was a past president of the Rotary Club of Neri and later rose to the position of Assistant District Governor of Rotary International, District 9142. He is a member of the Honor of Knights at Semulumba and Sub-Council Physician, Treasurer of the Catholic Men's Organization, St. Joseph, the Workers, and a Methuselah Chifu of Kegite Club, University of Nigeria, Enugu campus, aka Ilia, Nigeria. Author of the book Basic Neurosurgery. A second edition has been published. Another one is underway with several authors to contribute to it. He has attended so many courses and trainings and is in fact, he has a 1 million naira endowment for best graduating students at first attempt for the students in the best graduating medical student at first attempt in surgery, Faculty of Medicine, College of Health Sciences, Nnamdi Azikiwe University, which was instituted by the inaugural lecturer in September 2018. He is married to Wendy, a pretty woman, and their union is blessed with pretty offsprings. Shalom, Oluchukwu, Daluchi, and Chiemelie. Ladies and gentlemen, I present to you this colossus, a consummate professorial and academic, a leader of men, my boss, my mentor, my trainer, my teacher, and a father figure in my life. Our inaugural lecture, Professor Jude-Kennedy, Chinedu, EMEJULU. Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Dr. Kwogu is my first product, is my protege. So I think as of right, it becomes his duty to talk a little bit about his boss. Mr. Chairman, our Vice Chancellor, Professor Charles Okechukwu Simone, ably represented by the Director of Academic Planning, my own brother, Anwadiana, distinguished Professor Ike Odumegu. Thank you, sir, for your kind words. And if you permit me, I'll stand on the existing protocols to commence the 74th inaugural lecture of Nnamdi Azikiwe University, titled The Challenge of Pioneering Neurosurgery. I have 3 different inaugural lectures prepared. One was on the existing. I tried to demonstrate the amount of cases we lose because we haven't acted. It was a bit too tight. So I prepared a second one, which is the king is fragile. The brain, as the philosopher said, is actually the head of the body. But little items, including the privation of water, oxygen, exposure to carbon monoxide, can neutralize many parts of the brain. So despite being a king is fragile, I thought it was a little bit more technical. Then the pioneering thing ultimately falls on me. I could leave the rest for my younger colleagues to deal with. So this is the reason for this. Here we are. Let me send my gratitude first to God Almighty, who has already been thanked, and then to my family, especially my pillar and my prayer warrior, Wendy. My kids, these are my angels. Shalom, Oluchukwu, Luchi, and Chemele, who is here with us, baby of the house. And then my immediate family and siblings. Our eldest sister, Obi, just follow them the way. Emeka is all our PhDs. Ngozi, Father Dallas, Yankee, Watakwacha, and Ohamwo, who is here with us. It's a family of men, and you can imagine. I thank the Inaugural Lecture Committee for making it possible that I'm here, because without them, it wouldn't just have worked. I have a chain of mentors and colleagues who I may not finish mentioning their names, but they are there. Professor Simone, Professor Haneko, Emeritus Professor Ombon, who sent me on training to study neurosurgery, and his assistant, also Rando, Professor Amy Wonfor, who was the Professor Guni, Professor Ohebulam, a whole chain of them. I recall to the presence of Professor Udigwe in my life, Professor Ofieli, Professor Le Suleiman, Bibi Shehu, Professor Biwosu, Joe Ubaja, my CMD, GC Maduako, who bought the form for me to start residency, Sae BC Ojako, various supports. My HOD then was Professor Anyanwu, and all the way down, men who have influenced my life. I call Professor Shokumbi the Prince of Nigerian Neurosurgery, because he stands at the pinnacle of efforts to indigenize neurosurgery in Nigeria. Let's give a round of applause to this gentleman. And this was his own trainee and my trainer, his assistant, Venerable Professor Adefola Lomo, who was to be ordained the Bishop of the Anglican Church, and said, on the account of love for neurosurgery and the fact that he can remove his mitre and his robe to be operating in theater, he declined and remained a venerable. Then this is Emeritus Professor Samuel Sio Hebulam. He is the oldest surviving neurosurgeon in Nigeria and the foremost pioneer, setting up neurosurgery in 1974 at UNTH, currently founder of Memphis Hospital in Enugu, and the trainer of many trainers and the professor of many professors. The four gentlemen here are the top 4 icons of neurosurgery in Nigeria, and I trained under each of their feet. Left to right, Professor Hebulam, Professor Bibi Shehu, Professor M.T. Shokumbi, Professor Malomo. Then this gentleman should be mentioned specially, Professor Lawale Suleiman. He's my friend and my trainer. When the American Academy of Neurological Surgeons raised the issue of a scholarship, it was like, who will accept this gentleman from Nigeria? Professor Suleiman, who runs a hospital with 26 neurosurgical units under him, accepted to take me in. And at no cost, in fact, he provided me accommodation, everything I needed, transportation, until I finished my training. And it took me further than those who are not licensed in the country could, because I did so many things in theater, which ordinarily people wouldn't do. So I appreciate Suleiman. Let's give a round to him. So these are the rest of my colleagues. Professor Komolafe, you can see Professor Uche on the right side, Professor Jimo. Luckily, Professor Uche is about my only colleague from outside this institution who is here with us. Professor Uche, please, may we recognize you? Thank you. So this neurosurgery family in Nayut and Nayu, Unizik, left to right is Dr. Mbanugo, followed by Dr. Nkwerem, myself, Dr. Wibo, and Dr. Ekwogu. These are people who are, with the help of my colleagues around the country and around the world, we have trained and acquired for this university. These are the rest of other colleagues. Let me mention quickly the late Professor Imasonya, who was my successor as the president of Nigerian Society of Neurological Science. He died in office after taking off from me. And let's remember him before the Lord today, that the Lord will grant his soul eternal repose. We are talking of 2 years. Last week, Professor Clement Okolo was buried. Professor of pathology, my contemporary when I was training in Ibadan. May God also accept his soul in paradise. How did I start? I hail from Umwe Zangoro lineage. kindred in Awka village, Ihala town, Ihala local government area, Anambra state. I was just built before the Civil War, and as a 3A toddler, I went through the sordid images of the war. If you've been there, you probably won't need another war. Boys and the teacher. Sometimes I wonder whether at age I was able to achieve what he did. That was for 6 children. Unfortunately, during the war, there were so many displaced persons from all over the southeast, Oga, Adazi, and they took up the whole house. We ended up being squashed into 2 rooms out of the 12. And in those other rooms, there were about 18 different families cohabiting with us. That was the experience of the Civil War. My godfather, my uncle, my aunties, everybody squashed. Secondary schools had been sacked. There were no secondary schools because the enemy planes land even in schools, even in churches, in hospitals, without discretion. So those of us who were too young to go to primary were playing around the home. So we saw lots of violence. Suddenly you see a soldier with a cocked gun chasing somebody to conscript into the war. And sometimes they shoot and we watch them die in front of us. For some of us, we thought that was the way the world was made to be. Violence, killing. We never knew there was peace outside our lives until the war ended. Even our church, St. Joseph's Catholic Church, L-shaped structure was divided into 2. One half was for IDPs. The other half was for, clerical and church duties. Nowhere was spared. Around the churches were trees, mangroves, rainforest trees, very tall, and they were using this to advantage. What the teachers did was they cleared the foliage and put stools, blocks, so the board there, and the education still continued. Covered with the palm front. Because once the planes sight them from the air, they dropped bombs and payloads on them. So after the war, I was old enough to start primary school. My late headmaster, Mr. Lazarus Akaboyza, was the one that kept telling my mom, this young boy is going to have a PhD from primary 1. PhD, started calling me PhD. I don't know what it was, but all the same, I skipped 2 classes in primary school and I had to go to secondary school. Then there should be a form you fill with 10 schools. Then you pick one. Most of you are too young to have filled that form. So you got to pick one. 10 schools, they pick one and post you there. I stopped at 9. I didn't know the names of any school. There was no internet, no Google search. So Joseph Umezurike, my primary 4 teacher, called my mom and said, add Agolo Grammar School as the last one. So we wrote it in and dropped it. Fortuitously, when the results came out, that was where I was posted. The very last choice I never knew about. Secondary school was a bit of a trepidation and discovery. I hadn't left home before, and we have 5 classes in 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. The first 4 to stay in A, second 4 to B, in that order. I found myself in B. 1B, 2B. By 3B, I had moved to A. And by the time I was going to class, so I was on top of the list for the whole school. So I was 1 out of 200. The thought would be that immediately I should smash and enter the university. It never happened. My first jam 309, they say cutoff was 310. There was no sorting then. I had to wait for the next one. I scored 302, cutoff was 305. The last one, and I scored 298, and the cutoff was 290. I had to be stubborn about my desires. I didn't let go. I didn't drop out. Medical school was tough because finances were lean at home. Kid of teachers. Anatomy classes were hectic. Professor Karma Majorossi, one of the most knowledgeable men I have seen, a Hungarian syndicate from UN, insisted that we dissect dead human bodies with a scalpel and our bare hands. No masks, no gloves. Reason that we must feel the texture and know how the tendons and everything feel. For a 19-year-old, it was a horrible experience. For 2 weeks, I refused meat because every meat I called looked like the one I saw in the human body. And I was nearly starving to death. Willy-nilly, I survived the Suka and I graduated, retained in honors list, did my house job, did my youth service, became the best copper, 89-90 in Niger State. I served in the village of Alhaji Umar Farouk Bahago, the then Emir of Mina, and I kind of became his personal physician and friend. So I enjoyed a lot of privileges. This is me. So when you appoint me a minister tomorrow, somebody will not say I didn't do my service. And you can see the age, so it was not fabricated. I passed several exams. The one they call examination commission for foreign medical graduates, foreign medical graduates, to do my residency in the US. They refused me a visa. So I was too young, I was not going to come back. I continued doing my private practice until 97 when my dad died. I found my way back for residency training. It was Dr. G.C. Maduako that informed the Navy was taking, and we went there. I was with Orangusi, the first set that we are taking into resident training by examination, interviews, 5 written practicals, and incidentally, today, 2 of us are professors. So how did I get here? Sometimes the chains that prevent us from being free are more mental than physical. The philosopher, you can see that. I mean, that horse believes he's been tethered, so he must stand still. Meanwhile, he could take all the thing with him and take a flight. The medical curriculum is straightforward. If you don't have ASU strike, 6 years. If you have ASU strike, probably 10 years. You stay and after the house job, national service, residency training. Residency training is a process of specialization. There are 6 different systems in the body. So you pick one out of those and specialize in it. It lasts another 6 to 10 years. So by the time you're done, you spend close to 16 to 20 years in school. And when you come out, they make you lecturer 1. We call the Nnamdi now. Chineke said, that's why Ejire Thanksgiving. Now, each of those sections, you have primary fellowship, you have part 1 fellowship, you have part 2 fellowship. Each of them, you are supposed to spend 24 months, 24 to 36 months. I was so thirsty. I did it all in 17 months, and I left. So by 1998, when I came for residency training, I had spent 10 years outside of Nsukka, 10. And the most intriguing aspect of it was I was filling my form to be a resident. One of my colleagues was filling a form to be a consultant. So he was going to teach me, he was going to train me. So I knew that the time I lost in the wilderness was big, and I had to double up quick time. First fellowship, 9 months, part 1 fellowship, 17 months. Emeritus Professor Kemborn, who is seated here among us, random. He was monitoring the progress of this young man who came in from Lagos. And I didn't know. I went to exam in Ibadan and I cleared all my papers one time. In April of 2000. So as I came back, I was walking down the corridor. I was wondering, is it not this man, this senior house officer, wandering in the wilderness? I'm now a senior registrar. Is it possible? I didn't know. I was probably thinking aloud. And he jumped out of his office. He was heading to the director of finance. And he saw me. And it was very typical and vintage me. Kennedy, congratulations. Say, I was impressed with your work. And then I was impressed with your success. I was elated. So even the CMD knows about this result already. Then he turned back and he asked me, I heard that you are good in orthopedics. I said, yes, sir. Which specialty would you want to choose as a career? Sir, I said excitedly, neurosurgery. Professor Bonu stopped. He was walking. Suddenly stopped and turned around and looked at me. He said, what did you just say? I smiled the way I just smiled. I said, neurosurgery, sir. Oga wanted to know if I knew the implications of what I had just said. So he said, in that case, I should come and see him later that evening in his office. And I did go. Now, neurosurgery specializes in the nervous system. The rest are the other system. The nervous system is the system that makes sure we know ourselves. We are awake. You hear me, you interpret. I see your smile. I spank you, you get angry. You react appropriately. That's the nervous system. So there are various aspects of it. Neurological physicians. If you learn additionally how to operate, you become a neurological surgeon or a neurosurgeon. So after the decade-long training, if you pass your fellowship, you qualify. Now, the nervous system is made up of the brain, the spinal cord, and the peripheral nerves, 3 of them. A neurosurgeon is a specialist medical doctor who has mastered the science and art of how, when to, and when not to operate in the brain, the spinal cord, or the silent dictum in surgery. And he says that a good surgeon knows how to operate. A better surgeon knows when to operate. But the best surgeon knows when not to operate. So it's not just about, so the training teaches you decision. When to, when not to, in order to get the best results. So you live well alone if the need arises. So why did I choose neurosurgery? As a medical student, I was taught by Professor S.C. Ohebulam at UNN. And then he was later to become my consultant when I became he was with Joel Amota. So whenever I watch them make their way through the skull and brain, I'm perplexed and I'm filled with shock scare, and reverence. They will touch the brain, they will cut the brain, they will shift the brain, they will still close up the brain, and the person wakes up saying, "Isi Anambra konya." So I was, what is going on here? Incidentally, my eldest brother had a road traffic surgery. So on that evening, when Professor Bono said, I did go. He told me that he was going to sponsor me to any Nigerian training center for neurosurgery, but on Lagos, if I was sure of what I was saying. He asked me to make a choice. Naturally, I just came from Lagos, so I told him, send me to Lagos. And he made one of the most important statements in my life. He said, it will not give you the chance to focus on your training. So I'd rather send you to Ibadan, my own alma mater. And Bono made a distinction in surgery in 1965 in Ibadan. So I arrived in Ibadan, rainy season, October 2000. I went straight to Professor Mike Asosa, he's my cousin. I had already found me an apartment to stay. And that was a very remarkable one. Please, whenever you pray to God, pray God to bless Professor Mike Asosa for me. I took the whole next day preparing, then I entered the teaching hospital, and I was to see the head of neurosurgery, Professor M.T. Shokum. He was the provost of the College of Medicine then. And I went to his office. After meeting him, I realized that UCH Ibadan had neurosurgery training were a different kettle of fish entirely. It was not the routine thing you meet on the street. Professor Austin Adiolu was the chief resident. Ward rounds will start by 6:30 a.m. every day, including Christmas Day. It will end by 11 a.m. In between, if it's a clinic day, 9 a.m., you send people to clinic, ended by 5 p.m. Emergencies, 24 hours, no break. Second ward round starts again by 6 p.m. Surgeries happen back to back. I mean, you're in theater, you're scrub, you're operating. Good morning, good morning. Yeah. Good afternoon, good afternoon. Next thing you hear, good evening, good evening. Good night, good night. Good morning, good morning. And you look, the sun is already up for the second day while you are standing. It wasn't easy at all. And we are trained to be deadened to anything, both physical, intellectual, and emotional pressures. This routine lasted for me a total of 61 months, 6-1, 5 years plus 1 month. Then I was permitted or found fit to go and stand for the exam. The exams themselves are no easy feat. The prerequisites in didactic knowledge must be signed. Seminars, conferences, scientific publications, operative and non-operative skills, everything the candidate, I must have operated on at least 400 persons before I go for exam, 400. Lately, they added dissertation. There'll be 2 essays, compulsory, 2 MCQ questions, 100 each. There'll be long case, short case, separate exams, dissertation. You must score a minimum of 60 marks. And when you score it, they award you the fellowship of the West African College of Surgeons. Is when you are now awarded a fellowship, you'll be qualified to be appointed as a consultant neurosurgeon. So I passed my exam in October, part 2, and became a specialist. And I took the next quick decision. I quickly formalized my relationship with Wendy, and I took her straight to altar. Program, I did not just bring back the fellowship certificate from Ibadan. I also brought back the marriage certificate. This is our wedding picture. You could see the little girl smiling eye to eye. So my induction was in Accra, Ghana in February of 2006. I had a couple of fellowships. Then I headed home. When I was in Ibadan, it's a very sorrowful experience. So many nights they call me up, 1 a.m., 2 a.m. They've brought a patient. The patient is gasping for breath. He had an accident yesterday. There was no neurosurgical facility in the entire Southeast. They have to put him in an ambulance and drive the 550 kilometers to Ibadan. By the time I'll be reviewing the patient, he'll be dead. Many died. So immediately I said, I'm heading home. Heading home, sir, because they were embarrassing me. Once they call a patient by 2 a.m. that day, say EMEJULU's people, Ndi Igbo. So it wasn't a good experience. So when I came back, I was effectively in charge of the entire Southeast and South-South. Memphis had just come in and started, but there's no other public institution except Nnamdi Azikiwe University. And the challenges I faced were legion. The first challenge is having to be appointed lecturer 1 after 16 years in university education, graduate and postgraduate. It didn't really make sense. One should come in either as a senior lecturer or maybe a semi-reader, because I was teaching and training many residents, training many students all through my period of training. It wasn't fair. Now, the second challenge was like a missionary. I mean, you can imagine there's a church, something Church of God. and then they bring you and you begin to teach them new Bible, new laws. That's what I did, you know. So a missionary brought in, because before me, the teacher hospital had not seen neurosurgery done. They have their pattern of doing things, and we have our own. The university had never taught any lecture on neurosurgery, so it was then my duty to design students, design the curriculum for training of them doctors, design the protocols for running clinics, treatment of emergency cases, that is steps that must be taken that is legitimate and council approved, surgical operations in theater, ward rounds, running outpatients clinic, undergraduate, postgraduate, all fell on me. It was simply like revising the canon law. Luckily, Ibadan prepared me well for it. The third challenge was credibility. They all knew me before I left, and it was like, is this EMEJULU? Where they know yesterday? Are they sure he can take a patient to theater, open the brain, and the person will survive? Because are you going to give your wife to him? Many people refuse to. So from day one, I needed to prove that I could, and it was a very major challenge. I had no teacher around. I had no trainer. There's no past medical record. There is no operation notes, nothing. OYO was my name. I was basically on my own. Fourth challenge was workspace. People have already had clinic days, theater days, ward round. They have their spaces in the ward. I came and bawos on a TT model, one by one. Now I sort myself in. Now the fifth challenge, the need to get the right complement of instruments. We have to thank VAMED under the chairmanship of Professor Bono, because without VAMED, I would have fizzled away. I had no instruments, nothing. But VAMED provided us both CT, MRI, and some basic equipment that let us continue. Now, the sixth challenge was to convince the nurses, including my wife, that there are ways we do things. You know, if you're operating in the leg, that's a different technique. If you're operating in the, there's a way. And I'm just coming in an institution that's about 20 years old. So it was difficult, and we had a lot of clashes. It was like the conversation between the deaf and the blind. The deaf will be making so many gesticulations. If you're open eye, you can see and understand. But if you're blind, you can't see. The deaf cannot hear. So the conversation was difficult. What did I do? I wrote the first edition of my book to try to pass my message across. Basic neurosurgery for nurses, medical students, and doctors. Second edition in 2015, I revised it. The third edition will be out soon, and we are going to publish it this year. This was the first edition. I was trying to pass my message, both to residents, the doctors, my colleagues. So my arrival was not a good one for so many people, because biblically speaking, it was like leading to the rise and fall of many in the land of Israel. I had admirers, I have followers, I have psychophans, worshippers, skeptics. I have haters, critics, name droppers, enemies, friends in all strata of my workspace. And the reason was very clear. I didn't enter through the back door. I came in frontally, and I came in with a bang. I wasn't ready to sort it. So, of all the challenges I faced, the worst of them was the human factor. I was like a fastidious intruder into their sacrosanct system. And the reason was not far-fetched, because in the rare field of neurosurgery, once we blunder, men are going to die. So I refused to pander to any halfway measures. I totally refused. I made enemies, and still refuse today to compromise on standards. Consequently, I became popular and notorious in equal measure, 50-50. Among the staff, among the students. But for me, at least 50 was a pass mark. And I kept saying what I was saying. Because the truth will set you free, but it first of all piss you off. And then I knew it. First year, I was already before a panel. The nurse in charge of theater had taken me to a panel. I insisted that if you want to do prosthetic surgery, the nurse should gown. Before they gown, they said everybody will gown himself and contaminate. They sent a delegation to Ibadan to go and verify whether my claims are true. It was that difficult. That is whether what I was saying of how I operate is true. It didn't just end there. Within 1 year, I was back to the panel. The panel was what? I was on the corridor, and if you have two cases, like a baby, 3 months old, you want to operate on the innocent brain, and a man who had been drunk or smoking and was knocked into a gutter at Opi Weka, you have to take the baby, which is a clean case, first, before you go to the dirty case that came. They say no, they must be taken as they come. I said, barring emergency, that is the protocol. They refused. They took me there. And I was talking to the woman. That wasn't the problem. You know what she said? I will slap the daylights out of this boy who just came here. That she's been operating with Ojuku, operating with Udeku. Who am I to come here? Thank you, love. Who am I to come here and tell her what to do? So that she was going to slap me. My students were shocked. My doctors were amazed. Now, what took me to the panel was I told the matron, you are very free to slap me in front of student nurses. Consultant to consultant. But what I will assure you is that once you drop that slap, you will never leave this theater alive. Your burial will be tomorrow. The funny woman went on rampage. I didn't get the report of the panel though. I didn't get queries. So I thought all went well. Now, the third major incident I can recall is at this special care baby unit. I had my team of medical students with me. And we needed to go to where they keep these kids, fragile children. Some of them are premature, some have congenital malformation, some don't have the immunity, various problems. So they are in incubators in a special area. If you want to come in, you must have a change of your outside gown. Like this I'm wearing is outside. I'm carrying dirt, so I have to change to a clean one. So when I came, there was none. I said to the matron, please, can I have one? After grudging, she now brought one. I said, I have about 10 students. Get me their gown. He said, over her dead body. And we continued to argue. I saw some student nurses. I said, but he said they are posted there. But we are guests, so to speak, in our hospital. So next thing she did was pull her phone and she called the consultant in charge. The consultant came. I told him what it was all I mean. The consultant listened to me attentively and began to dress me down. It was terrible. In fact, he concluded by telling me that if I was insisting on gowning my students, I could jolly well not come to their unit to see any people. A very senior consultant or reader. That he has made his point. The only or I won't come with you. So I pacified. We continued. So the list of challenges were very long. Now it was never a bed of roses for any pioneer consultant soldier. Most of the students saw me as their freedom fighter, human rights activist. Most of the junior workers held my receipt and dedication to duty. But half of the resident doctors and consultants hated me with a passion. Some called me a slave driver. Some just don't want to see me. You know, you see what I wrote there? I began to believe that the hardest language to speak for several people is the language of truth. That's the hardest language. If the chips are down here, most of us will modify our responses to it. It's terrible. And no one is hated more than he who speaks the truth. You know, but Papa Winston Churchill gave a word that kept giving me consolation. He said, you will never reach your destination if you stop and keep throwing stones at every dog that barks at you. So I continue moving. 2006, I was the head of accident emergency. And I was told that the A&E was the window of the hospital. I should make it shine. So I took up the job, including the job of being a consultant neurosurgeon. In 2007, the federal government had introduced the Savicom Charter under President Olusegun Obasanjo. And Professor Aro Ofieli, the then CMD, took up the Savicom Charter and launched it in the hospital. So we took it up. I automatically became the nodal officer at A&E, and we set to work. So in the unit, we introduced a lot of changes. Every emergency case that comes must be seen within 5 minutes. And after seeing the patient, if there's a need for O&G or ENT, specialist unit, they must come within 30 minutes. I had my logbooks, I had my attendance register, and I put my foot hard on the ground. So I held fortnightly drills. Every 2 weeks, I call all the workers, and we simulate like an accident or an emergency. There were so many gunshots in there with them. So we simulate a situation where they brought so many people who are gunshots or fire, and we practice. What does the cleaner do? What does the clerk do? Accounts officer and us. We do it every 2 weeks. So we became a perfect system. I equally introduced a reward system. If you do well, I give you some handouts. Financial handouts from my pocket as incentive. Monthly meetings, I have 30 of them from my pocket. Good meal, good drinks. So the A&E became one happy, beautiful unit. Introduced also was the CMD's program of doing 8 a.m. ward rounds. Every day, 8 a.m., we all gather to review all the cases seen in the hospital the previous day. And at that meeting, head of finance, head of pharmacy, head of nursing, head of store, head of security, head of wards. If there's a problem, why did this patient not get this drug? It's not available. CMD will ask, head of pharmacy, what happened? He will call the chief pharmacist. He will come, what happened? And he said, there's no money. Store, apply. They will apply there. Director of finance, bring the paper. He will sign it. So things you are working. Now, Oniba J, now it started working again. So 2 years after that introduction, I decided to do an audit because you don't do things blindly. Let's see the impact of cervical. The results were astonishing. We started 2007. By 2009, we published, so we could compare. And that was the report. It was published in the World Medical Journal, Repositioning of Service Delivery in the Nigerian Health Systems, the impact of cervical on emergency and other services in a tertiary hospital. You can see me on the left, much younger than now. You could see Professor Igwe then, who was the CMAC. Professor Dr. Eleje is there. Then Professor Ofieli, Professor Nwafo, and Charles Anmonye, who was the head of medical records. I put him along in that publication because he records authenticated what we did. Now take a look at what happened. By 2005, it was 2 years before cervicum. 2009, 2 years after cervicum. So I took 2007, 2 years before, 2 years after, and compared. Number of patients that came to the hospital in 2005 were 80,604. By the time I was doing my study, it has risen to 158,654. Look at this graph. Look at accident and emergency, my own unit. We are seeing about 4,000 patients a year. By the time I was doing my studies, 14,000 patients a year. From 4,000. It wasn't a joke. So we looked at hospital admissions, 4,718 versus 15,650. Laboratory service, they did about 58,000 tests. By the time we are surveying, 115,000 tests were done. In the surgical operations, 1,000 surgeries were done in a year. By the time we are doing 5,642 in just 2 years of our activity in A&E. I began to know that alteration of attitude makes more difference than any other thing you can do in service delivery. Look at baby deliveries in Professor Digwe's ward. 596 people, we raised it to 2,123. Now, the most gratifying aspect is number of people that died. When we saw 80,604 patients in 2005, 284 patients died in the hospital that year. When we now saw 158,654, only 127 died. Attitude is all. So the cervical effect was very intimidating, but I had to start other work. I needed to resign. I left the accident and emergency. The reason, my wife was heavy for her second child. We just had Oluchukwu, and the neurosurgery was beginning to blossom. I was almost going to kill myself. People were warning me, advising me. All these gray hairs and lost hairs were during that time of exertion. And I don't think any young man should be subjected to that. Now, I now have to focus on neurosurgery. I did unusual things to set up my unit. I was at Naut every day by 7 a.m. and I left by 10 p.m. So that if there's any problem, because there's no other person with the knowledge, with the information, none. I'm just there, one-man riot squad. I slept over in my desk. We were discussing in surgeries, and they reminded me of the camp bed that used to stay in my office. When I operate late at 3 a.m. or 4 a.m., I go to my office and sleep on my camp bed. Go home, take a bath, and continue my normal work the next day. They say it's called duty. My refrigerator was always full, drinks, edibles. So midnight, anytime. I operated on Sundays, Saturdays, Easter, Monday, New Year. No other. There's nothing stopped me from doing anything at any time. So it was in this hard mixture of love and hate, work and fight, respect and loath, that the solidity of neurosurgery in this our great citadel slowly began to consolidate. Now it was established in 88 and up until 2006, until I came. No. So I had to take it up to glory. I was in Japan in 2007, where I learned the Seldinger technique for coiling to obliterate aneurysms in the brain. When I came home, I sent a report that they should provide this, provide this, provide this. It was kept in view. And that has been from 2017. Now the knowledge is all lost. Rome 2001, opposed to robotic surgery. We are in Rome operating at a theater in Texas with a robot. And they gave me all it needs to put this, that they can even come to install. Present the reports, all came to naught. I was in Chicago, then in New Orleans in 2006. Now, some of my work has been outlined in department. I was there HOD for 5 years. The department was just, nobody was there. We had just our beloved retiring professor. The rest of the residents, they train and they run away. So what did I do? I had to recruit 2 part-time consultants. I accepted a reader on sabbatical from Abu Zaria. We sent 8 residents on outside posting to train Benin, Enugu, Ibadan. Today, 6 out of 8 of them are consultants and lecturers. In fact, one of them is Mrs. Orangosi. In fact, can you just stand up? And suddenly we had a department that can take on all sorts of surgeries. And from there, I was pronounced a professor in 2012 by Professor Ebuka. And reader in 2012 by Professor Ebuka. I was offered a double jump, but I was advised to turn it down. And I regret that decision till now. Now, 2015, Professor Ahaneku Mirioma FAS signed my promotion to Professor of Neurosurgery. So what do we treat here? We treat cases that are born with the child and cases that are acquired after the child is born. The human nervous system becomes distinct by the 3rd week of intrauterine life. By the time a woman knows she's pregnant, she's already 2 weeks going to 3 weeks. And by that time, she didn't see her period, these malformations have started. And they stop at the 8th week. So you have a limited window of 3 weeks to 2 months. If you don't do anything, your child is born with a defect. It starts with what we call the primitive pit. Later, it induces the neural plate, and then it begins to fold. If you look at the lower images, it starts come together in the middle. That's the human body. And sometimes it's not very perfect. One nostril may be larger than the other. One leg may be longer than. Check yourself. If you're a woman, stand before the mirror. One breast will be hanging lower than the other. Because sometimes, yes, nature is not perfect. Only God is. This is a normal form brain, but sometimes they don't form normally. A brain has 2 hemispheres. And those hemispheres each has about 4 different lobes. There are other ones, but the major lobes. And they have different functions. If I touch one part of your brain, one part of your body will either respond, react, or paralyze. So the brain is the king of the body. Now, inside the brain, inside the skull, brain sits there, just 1.5 kg weight, or 1,500 mils in volume. It represents 2% of the whole body weight of a 70 kg man. So 2% is the brain. But do you know what the brain takes 20% of the cardiac output. 2% will take to all the blood from the heart, 20% go to the brain. So it takes a tenfold because it has to work. There is no machine made in life that's as complicated as the brain. Look at that brain. All those wires you see are vessels going in, coming out, programming. I mean, once I touch you, you don't need to think. You know I touched you. Once I pinch you, you don't need to think. You know I pinched you. The transmission, the interpretation, and the reaction is automatic. It's almost timeless. One time. And that is what the brain serves us to do. If you look at that image, number 1 serves the motor strip. If you do anything in that area, the body will paralyze. Inside the brain, you're not touching the hand, you're not touching the foot. Bam. If you see number 2, that's the speech area. My capacity to communicate, motor speech, that area, broken speech area. If you do anything there, I'll be looking at you. I can't make a word again. The number 4 is for vision. The number 3 is for hearing, and so on. So imaging studies were very good for us in the brain. Before, people didn't know those things. Somebody is sick, having headache, suddenly he will die. Suddenly he will be paralyzed. You hit somebody in the spinal cord, he can't move the leg. So neuroimaging with a big bang with the CT scan some 60 years ago. The CT could show us inside the brain while you are still alive. It can show us where the brain while you are talking, where you are moving, unlike what was happening before then. So it revolutionized practice both in medicine and surgery. Later on, MRI came, but it was not as dramatic. Ultrasound scan is of very little use because it cannot pass through the skull. X-rays can only give you picture of bone. It can't give you picture of brain. So we use all these facilities that came to treat nature's bad job. As I told you, nature is not perfect. Sometimes nature does very bad jobs. Let's see some of the jobs they do. Malformations. Most of the malformations happen within the 3 to the 8 week of intrauterine life. And it has been found that up to 80% can be corrected by taking folic acid. This tiny tablet that is yellow. If you take one from your reproductive age group, puberty, by the time you're having babies, 80% of the malformations will not be there. Other factors that cause malformation include the age of the mother, if the mother is 40 years or more, malnutrition, malaria, fever, drugs, trauma, radiation, diabetes, hypertension. Now, if this tube comes together and doesn't fold, trouble starts. If you look at that tube there, there's an upper part that is open. It's called the cranial neuropore. There's the lower part that is open, called the caudal neuropore. The cranial neuropore will develop into the brain. If it doesn't close, part of the brain will protrude. Look at this image. The baby on the left has no brain, no skull, because he didn't close. It can only survive a few minutes or a few hours after. That's why the fact that the heart is okay, legs, everything, but the baby will just die. Because you can't survive without a brain. These are some of the ones we have treated. These are our own local cases. So it's not just a Igbo case. This is a massive double brain. You know, from incomplete closure of the cranial neuropore. You could see that big giant encephalocele where we tore it down, put it together. But the one that gives me more joy is this kid. The brain herniated in front instead of at the back. It displays the eyes. You can't see the left eye. You can see the right eye. Look at the nose put down to the mouth. And I had to go in. This kid was only hearing sounds, wasn't seeing things. By the day I went to remove the sutures, you could notice in the second image that the eyes are coming close together. As soon as I spoke, we made eye contact and I started dancing in the wall. They don't know why. For the first time, a child is able to focus and see his doctor, and we can put up a communication and engage a smile. So we felt really good. There are other problems that can arise. This is Cruzon syndrome. They are called cranial dysmorphisms, a situation where the brain is okay, but the bones and tissues around are not well made. In this child, the whole front of the skull is maldeveloped. It's small, tiny. So the brain is big, but it's cushioned down and held down like a pot, like it's a pot, iron pot of skull. And my duty is to go and expand that skull and make it big to contain the brain. Now, I took the patient to theater. That was when I was still enthusiastic about so many things. And this is the baby there, shaven. You could see the swelling in the second image on the left. I had infiltrated it to make my cut. Now, I cut open. I reflected the whole skull to the mouth, the scalp of the body to the mouth, so I can see nose, eye, most of the things while I walk. And I had to take away part of the skull, keep it aside, and now take the connection between the skull and the face. It's called supraorbital bar, or the spectacle of the eye. If you look at the arrow, there's a green arrow, the blue arrow there. That if you look in front of the spectacle, it looks like eyeglasses. Those are the orbits, the orbital ring. So I had to detach it from the face and move it about 4 or 5 cm in front and reattach and connect it to the face again. And if you look at the two images, you can see that that bone has been reflected and pushed further apart. If you check the blue line, it's longer on the right side than the left. And then this is what we got. I gave the baby a big head, a proper head to contain the brain. Now, if you compare these two images, you can see one has a squashed tiny plagiocephaly in front. Then the second one has a properly expanded and then triangle to get the base. Before surgery, the base was at the back. After surgery, the base. And the baby went home. Parents were happy. They were celebrating me like a small god. And I was busy enjoying my work. So this is called Adeloye-Odeku disease, coconut on the head. It was discovered by 2 Nigerian neurosurgeons. The very first one, Nigerian neurosurgeon, 1962 in Ibadan. With his proteges, Professor, both of them are now late, Adeloye. And this was indexed after their name in the International Guinea of Disease, ICD of Diseases. So it is named after Nigerians, Adeloye-Odeku disease. If you open this, all you need to do is just excise it and close it, and the baby will be fine. But because nobody knows, they'll first of all go to a Babalawo, Dibia, go to a chemist shop, go to one midwife, and the person will put a needle to want to suck it. Look at this kid. They have introduced pulse. You could see the tip of the pulse there. And when I went in, the bone underneath has been eaten up. Look at that image. I had to completely excise that bone and fill it. Now we can have too much water in the brain. I'm sure you're familiar with hydrocephalus. Yes. See, if you look at these two images, the one on the left is a normal brain. even though they weren't taken at the same level. You could see the whole ash area. The whitish area is the bone. Inside is the ash, that's the brain. The dark dots are made up of CSF or water. Now, if you look at the second image on the right, everything is water. Very little brain. You could see, and that is, so how can a baby resume with water in the brain? So we have to operate on them. What we do, we divert the water. Yeah. As no day, she, awali agota. So I awali agota. We put a shunt from the brain to the abdomen and divert the water. And sometimes you have various complications from it. It's a delicate surgery. No one is perfect. We are not God. We are just good. We are not God. So look at some of my problems. That one, the CSF is percolating around the tube. It's called pericardial leakage. In the second one, it's been infected. That was why I was fighting with the nurses. Now we don't mix these cases up because see, pus, all those things that look like rosary, those roundish, they are all pus, abscess, abu. And we had to take out the whole shunt and start again. For some of these are peasant parents can't even afford a daily meal. The other one has overdrained. Now, the most intriguing is this one. You put the shunt in the tummy, it went into the intestine and came out through the anus. See that pipe there? And of course, we put our work together, combating the complications of vitreoperitoneal shunting. It was published in a pediatric neurosurgery, a highly regarded and indexed journal. I published that article with my registrar then, who is now an associate professor, Dr. Jide Ugu. Look at him here. So I've really trained men, man. He worked with me and we published that work and we really love what we did. Now, sometimes at the back, look at this man. Look at that tiny dimple. That tiny dimple is sitting on a keg of gunpowder. Under it, the spine did not close. It's called bifid spine. Because it's hidden, see, because it is hidden, it's called spinum bifidum occultum. Occult. But under its activity, and look at that child. If you look below that dimple, you can see excoriations on the skin. Over time, the child has started leaking urine, leaking feces, and lacking control of the sphincters. So we had to go in. These are more overt ones that are called cystica. You know, these are all our cases. Pediatric neurosurgery, peculiarities in cases of spinal bifida cystica, which were managed recently in Southeast Nigeria. So apart from the congenital abnormalities, we treat acquired cases. Acquired cases are cases that arise while the patient, it could be infection, degenerative wear and tear. Look at trauma. See the reason why we have trauma. Look at this young lady carrying her entire generation on top of a motorbike. And not one person had a protective gear. Not one. So you wonder what. Now look at this guy, Ado Bello Abdul Kadir. He's a 10-year-old boy. And they armed him with a rifle as a vigilante member in Katsina State, the president's state. So we can have head injuries. And the very first case we had is this case. Chisom. Chisom was Nau's first neurosurgical case I did. It was a Sunday, and I was just called from home. This kid had had a fall from a one-story building, hit on the concrete floor, barely 3.5 years old, and then became unconscious. Over 2 days, they thought he was going to recover. There has been no neurosurgery established, but somebody knew I was in town, and they now called me. And then what did we do? We took the baby to theater. No CT scan, no MRI, no, nothing at all. And what we did, we do the x-rays, opened it. By the time we opened the skull, blood was nearly touching the roof. And that was it. So we operated, spent about 4 hours, finished up. After some days, Chisom opened her eyes. And I was actually invited to their Thanksgiving for Chisom. Now, this is Chisom in secondary school, Chisom in university. In fact, Chisom is here with us. Chisom, can you rise and be acknowledged? Chisom, thank you very much for surviving for us, because without it, there will be no this success story. Please be seated. So they always say when you get to the brain, they don't survive. These are some of the skulls that have damaged, which we have worked on. See how well they heal. This was slashed almost into 2. And then, look at this. Uncle, welcome, and Uncle lifted the 1-year-old, and the ceiling fan went, bam. And then we did imaging, and we could find exactly where all those things are. And we operated. You know, you could see this. And then when the baby was well, of course, if you look in, you may notice that it healed so well. You know? See. And then there are patients that have blood in the brain. We have to put a pipe and suck out all the blood. See. Now, this acute extradural hematoma, the fastest killer of all times. And when we open the skull, see how much it is big, it is much. Many is chronic subdural hematoma. In this case, we have to make holes to let the blood come out of the brain. See the blood flying in the air. And if you don't, the patient may usually die. You know. So we have, there's not so many videos to play, but this is bullets. They shot through the head, cracked the skull. The bullet lodged in the brain. We had no serious imaging. We had to borrow the services of radiologists, get their ultrasound, locate the bullet, see the bullet down there, took it out, and we published it. And this did a complete hemisection of 1/3 of the face. A keke ran through the schoolboy, edged the gutter, and half of the face was gone. You can see. I had to call the services of my colleagues, all of us, the ENT surgeon, Dr. Afiadigwe, then Professor Chukwuanuku, the plastic surgeon, and we put this head together. A few things we do. Now, sometimes when those skulls damage, they leave a defect. And those defects, we create some resins to cover them. It is called cranioplasty. Look at this one. If you look at the first image on the left, the brain is pumping out through them and dividing the skull into two. So we had to go down there. We had to go and reverse it. We had to create an artificial bone. We had to cover it. And here we have the brain. So let me quickly tell you something about a discovery we made. Look at this. When patients have spinal injury, they are paralyzed and they stay long in bed and they develop ulcers. These are ulcers at the back of a man. So we wonder what to do. We had to think outside the box. We wanted to buy water foam, 250,000. The patient could not afford it. So my resident there, Uche suggested that we use pure water bags. And I say, on the condition that we document our work. And we have started, instead of using 250 naira water bed, we buy 10 bags of pure water, 80 naira each, 800 naira. And we got good results. They recovered, the ulcers healed. When we looked at our results, we found out that 64% of those who did not use it will have ulcer. And then those who use it, 67% will not have ulcer. And we published it, of course. Does improvised waterbed do that? So we did quite, there are tumors and a whole lot of them. Time is not on our side, but I have to quickly conclude. This is an interesting case. This gentleman came to us with those bumps on the face. And I told him we have to take samples and take them to lab to know what to do with them. He ran away. After 2 years, he returned like this. And Professor Awka and Professor Onyora were there. I gave them the specimen. We got this, and we needed to do histochemistry. I took this specimen, entered my car, drove 550 kilometers to sarcoma, which is cancer. So let me tell you a little story. There could be pus in the brain. These are all puses which we published. Let me tell you a final story before Chukwuanuku will drive me out of here. Yes, on one beautiful Friday morning, I had come to work at my usual time. And while we were there, I had arrived at 7. I was rushed immediately. These are our theaters in the US. This is the next level. This is where we should be. There is no reason why for us to be lagging. This one looks like International Space Center, but it's actually one spine we wanted to put instruments in. Look at that theater, and everything is in Excel. Now, this is called the C-arm. Since I came, I have been begging for a C-arm. Till date, I don't have it. In this theater, we had 2 for each patient. And these things do not cost an arm and a foot. A C-arm helps you know what you do. This is us, me and Professor Wale Suleiman, who really gave me a chance and a hand in several surgeries he did in the United States. And this is now. So I arrived to work and I just came in. And then 14 December, 14 December 2006, a Thursday. And there was this little girl, secondary school girl from Umuahia, who was climbing up the staircase and slipped and fell. and rolled all the way back to the breaking concrete and became unconscious. So there was no neurosurgeon anywhere except in Newi, and the father is not living in town, and they rushed her to our center. They told them there was a certain man in Newi who can be of help to them. So after reviewing the kid, straight away, I didn't get to my office. We went straight to theater. After about 4 hours, we came out. A few days later, Nena opened her eyes. Further few days, the father came back from somewhere in the north, just came in to thank us for taking care of the daughter, even in his absence. And you could see the gratitude in the girl's eye that her hero is in town. 15 years on, this is Nena. You know? So you see, we not only make them, keep them alive, we actually make them more beautiful. If Nena is here, Nena, may you stand and let us see you. She's a doctor now, actually. How did I bring her? She kept telling her mother that she wants to see the doctor that touched her brain, that saw her brain. She wants to meet that doctor. They called severally. I didn't care to pick the call until they sent a message that she wants to see the person who saw her brain. And this is Nena here for her. Please, let's appreciate her and work of God. So in conclusion, anything a man's mind can conceive, that he can achieve. If he works for it, you must work. Oh. Dreams work if we work, not when we don't work. Pioneering neurosurgery was a daunting task indeed, but we are still able to surmount the innumerable human challenges and make it. I could have stopped and continued to cry or entered the plane and left for United States, but I chose to sit back and fight. And fight I did. A team job here. My colleagues in surgery confirmed that a team job for nearly 20 years. And that is the result we are seeing today. Our mortality rates were one of the lowest in the world, 14%, and with God all things. So it always sounds impossible until it is done, says Nelson Mandela. Thank you very much. So, merci beaucoup.
JKC. JKC. We thank our inaugural lecturer, Professor Jude-Kennedy. You've done a great job. Next item will be the decoration, but let me just take a second only to recognize many distinguished personalities that entered. Please, I may not call your names individually, but you are recognized. Professor Nwafo Zenabo, my own personal teacher, Professor Frank Awka, Uche from Enugu, if I have been recognized. Professor Bertrand Obiwosu, the Dean of Medicine, is here, ably represented by the head of surgery of Nayut Newi and then Azikiwe, Professor T.O.G. Chukwuaniku. Chairman of Anambra State is here, Jane Ezono. Chairman of MD Can Nayut Newi is here too, Chinedu Ilokanono. My teacher, Professor Joy Ebenebe. My teacher, Professor M.E. Nwafo. Several academics. We actually do not have the time, but you are all welcome. I will now call on the chairman of the inaugural lecture committee, my personal boss, Professor Richard Owakwe, to come and invite the Vice Chancellor of this university to decorate our 74th inaugural lecturer, Professor. So you will immediately give the vote of thanks after this process. This is about you are here. Okay, thank you. Shall we see, sir?
Mr. Vice Chancellor, sir, on behalf of Nnamdi University Inaugural Lecture Committee, I confirm that Professor J.K.C. Neurosurgery has successfully delivered the University 74th Inaugural Lecture. Mr. VC, sir, I kindly request you to so recognize and decorate him, sir. Chairman, Inaugural Lecture Committee, Inaugural Lecture, all the distinguished professors, on behalf of Senate, congregation, convocation,
and council, I am particularly happy to decorate the 74th inaugural lecturer of Nnamdi Azikiwe University, Professor of Neurosurgery, Professor J.K.C. EMEJULU.
Mr. VC, sir. Just a few, so just a few minutes so that we end formally, and you can have all the day to greet him. JK, the anesthetists have not left. This is, sir, I think giving a vote of thanks is most of the times a repetition. The inaugural lecturer has actually, he began with what I would call vote of thanks by acknowledging people, and the masters of ceremony has done the same. All the same, we want to thank you and the university for regularly supporting this program. We are really very grateful, because without the VC's approval and all that it entails, we will not be able to perform. I feel so glad today. I think for me, it's a different and wonderful day. Wonderful, different and wonderful because of the kind of massive support shown by the constituency of the inaugural lecturer. I really feel quite humbled and so happy. So we must continue to thank and thank again all those members of the faculty who have made the sacrifices to be here today. Visa, it might interest you to know that currently we are holding 2 examinations, our 4th MB and our final MB. But yesterday, JKC had to be involved in long examination, which we are going to conclude. For that reason, we changed the order of this inaugural lecture. It was supposed to be Professor Prosper Dog today, but they are having orals right now as we are speaking. So we had to quickly make some alternative arrangements. So we want to thank everybody in medicine. We must thank you, Professor EMEJULU, for accepting. He has always asked me, anytime. I didn't know, I didn't look at Ugu's timetable very well, so I did not know that a dog was going to be involved in the exam today. And I got the information very late. And I'm passionate about this inaugural lecture series. I don't want anyone to be missed. I called the first 3 persons after a dog, and nobody was ready. But members told me, let's leave it now. We can continue in February. I said, no, we must do 2 inaugural lectures this month. We will not start with irregularity. And I called on EMEJULU very late in the night, say, Shifo, this is, can you cross over to Macedonia? Says, you will make it not minimal access. You will widen the incision. I told him to widen the incision. And he very graciously accepted. So we must thank him. Without him, we would not have had any lecture today. We'll have to wait until our dog is ready or somebody else. So Dr. EMEJULU, Professor of Neurosurgery, and we thank you very much indeed for coming. And all the people that you have called that have touched our lives. I really, as I said, it's a very wonderful day. Mbona is not our father. No, that would be the meaning. He's our great-grandfather. Mbono has touched every medical doctor here, either directly or indirectly. Both directly and indirectly. He took many of us when we came from, we knew nobody at all, but he's just a very different human being entirely, and we want to thank God for him and pray for his good health and continue the living. We thank you very much, sir. Professor EMEJULU, you are really, you pulled a crowd. All the provosts and past provosts. Professor J.I.B. Adema is there. Igrigi, we thank you very much indeed. In fact, he came so early, as we spoke around 10:30 or something, was going to the auditorium. I didn't know he would still be able to make it. We are so glad to have you, the Faculty of Medicine. And the current serving, I think this is one of the inaugural lectures that everybody, principal officers, if you like, of the Faculty of Medicine and the college is here. Professor Udigwe's name was spelled wrongly yesterday. They wrote him General. General. Yeah, for those of you who attended a Senate meeting, his name in the Senate yesterday was General. Provost, we are so glad that you people found time. Provost is taking part in 4th MBA exam. All of us, we are all taking part in the exam, and they still squeeze the time, apart from those in public care, because they are currently having papers today. Provost, we thank you very much indeed for your being here. Professor Awka, I saw him came late. Yeah, we are welcome, sir. We are so glad to have you. Well, Awka is a builder. We call him a builder. He's an expert in the establishment of medical education in the Southeast. That's the truth. That is the truth. He made it in Anambra. He made it in Abia. He's back in Anambra. He's all over the place. So when we want to establish medical school, please call on Professor Frank Awka, Emeritus Professor of Plastic Surgery. Yeah, Nzenabo, who made so much difference in Abia State. Professor Awka took me in 1996, immediately on coming to Abia State. But I couldn't make it. I had to. I hope. It's a story for another day. And I'm happy I didn't go to Abia State. Mbono decided to took me instead. So I thank the two of you for giving me a chance. And seeing all of you here. The dean, former provost, I said, all the provosts, all the provosts, Professor A.M.E. was former provost, GIB, former provost, Udi were former provost, and the deans is really interesting. The former dean of the Faculty of Medicine, Professor S.N. Wosu, a renowned ophthalmologist, professor of ophthalmology. We thank you very much, sir, for everybody finding time to come here today. Dean of the Faculty of Clinical Sciences. It's really, EMEJULU, you are blessed. You know, in all these audience. I didn't know that we are going to have this kind of audience. And our friends, most of the times, because many of us from Newi hardly come to Awka, so many of the times people hardly know what happens at Awka. But see how the house is filled. I mean, despite the fact that we are so busy at this time at Newi. So I thank everybody, those from psychology, social sciences. I don't know everybody's name, and they really added some kind of a slang. It's not easy to get the approval for individuals to be identified in public as having been seen by a doctor. I know what would have gone through. So when doctors make presentation, they have to cover individuals because you have a note not to say anything, even after an individual has died. You don't mention anybody unless they have signed and they're giving a consent. I'm so glad about these beautiful guests. One is already a medical doctor. It's our prayer that God will continue to use her to touch even more lives. I hope Chisomi is also reading medicine. Oh, well, she will read whatever we make her to influence lives. Thank you, madam, for accepting to come and for bringing this beautiful, to God alone be all the glory. As EMEJULU said, they are not gods, but they are good. God works with instruments and agents. This is one of them. We thank you very much indeed. So we thank everybody, and we invite you next week. Yeah, ordinarily, our inaugural lecture is twice a month, first Thursday and third Thursday, but we had to do 1 week because of this exam period. It was supposed to be, or it's supposed to be on Thursday, but we understand there is going to be a lecture at the College of Health Sciences, so we had to make some adjustment and shift it to Friday morning by 11 a.m. Is also from the Faculty of Medicine here. That will be Public Health, Professor Prosper Adogo. So the medical people are taking the inaugural lecture. So I invite all of you, the way you are today, I want to see you on Friday morning. Thank you very much indeed, and God bless. After the closing prayer by Professor J.C. Ebenebe, we will recess in the reverse order. Vice Chancellor, please don't get to near the door until the VC leaves. And then just the way we came in, and then we go in the reverse order. So thank you once again, everybody, and remain blessed. Professor J.C. Ebenebe, please. Bianiru no chukwu kina goku. Ebe ka chukwu no.
In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Ghost. Our dear Heavenly Father, we exalt and magnify your holy name. We thank you for the privilege of gathering us together here. We thank you for traveling mercies in these insecure times. We thank you for our inaugural lecturer, the wisdom you have given him. We thank you for being with him in the course of the presentation of the lecture. Very exciting inaugural lecture. Our Father and our God. We pray that subsequent inaugural lectures will be equally exciting and well attended. Abba Father, even as we take our leave to retire to our various homes, we pray that you detail your angels to keep us company until we get to our various destinations. To your greater honor and glory. In the mighty name of Jesus, we have prayed.
Sorry.